Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how to play offlane. So it's another video in the series of how to play the different positions. So what is offlane, or the 3 position? Well, offlane is the core role that lanes usually in the lane opposite of the safe lane. So in the Radiant team, that's top lane, in the Dire team, that's bottom lane. And the offlane is also the short lane or the hard lane, just because the towers here are not as long, if you can just kind of tell by the shape of the map. And the reason why it's the offlane or the hard lane, and the reason why offlaners go here, is usually because the creeps meet closer to the other team's tower. So the creeps meet like right here or right here. And so because of that, it's a more dangerous lane. Usually you pick tanky strength heroes in this position that can usually survive in the lane. They're usually pretty good laners overall, but maybe they don't scale as well with items. So the big thing is they can lane well, they can, maybe even dominate lanes potentially, but they're not carries, because usually even if they get 6-7 slotted, it's not like they're doing a ton of right-click damage. They're usually not right-click damage focused. They're more like initiation focused, tank focused, team fight control focused. So having some farm on them is good. That's why you want them to get last hits in lane. That's why they farm sometimes throughout the game until they maybe hit 1 or 2 item timings. But overall, they kind of, seed their farm or seed their farm to the mid and safe lane heroes, because that 1 and 2 position, they just need more farm to do damage. They need to do a lot of right-click damage. They need a lot of items to do spell damage, control, catch, whatever. Usually offlane heroes, they're just good enough with a few items. They just tank up a little bit. They're very good strength heroes. They're innately good just with their spells and their tankiness because of their strength and all of that kind of stuff. They maybe just need a blink dagger. They maybe just need a BKB. They need like 2-3 items, and then they can be really good. And anything else from there is just a luxury. Hopefully, if they're stomping the game or doing really well, they can just get a lot of these other items that help with the team fight and all that kind of stuff. So that's pretty much how to think of the offlane in general and why they're there. And they're the third role. They're kind of the middle of the pack. They're not a support. They are a core, but they don't get as much farm as the other 2 core roles that we've already covered. So now we're going to jump into looking at all of the offlane heroes. So I've included pretty much all the offlane heroes here that play offlane. I know there was, there's a little bit of a difference between, some heroes, like Odie isn't on this list. I don't know that I consider Odie an offlaner. I would maybe put Odie back on this list if, it just became actually popular in a real offlaner, not just kind of this weird meme build. But in any case, so there's some that might be missing, but generally these are mostly what you think of as offlaners, and I divided them into 3 categories. So the first category is going to be initiator/catch heroes. The second category is going to be tower pushers and defenders, and the third category is going to be team fight heroes. Now, basically, the big difference between these 3 categories is obviously what you see. The initiators, they have some kind of spell that's a stun, or they can jump on people to start fights. The tower pushers usually don't have any kind of mobility or don't love buying blink and those kinds of things, so they pretty much just sit there, defend towers, push towers, all that kind of stuff. It kind of comes hand in hand with pushing, and also defending are very similar. And then you have the team fight heroes. Now, team fight heroes, generally, honestly, a lot of the initiators, a lot of the tower pushers, you can also think of them as team fight heroes. I'm just kind of having this category as a category where, these heroes don't really push towers or defend towers the best. They're also not the best initiation heroes, but they do other things in the offlane role. They either follow up with counter initiation, they follow up other stuns that maybe the mid player or the supports have, or they just have general team fight spells. When everybody groups up, when everybody pushes towers, they have things that save people, they have things that heal people, they have spells that are really good in team fights, all of that kind of stuff. And there's obviously a little bit of vagueness here, but this is just a good way to understand the role. So, and also you can see, obviously, I have like Tidehunter in all 3. So I've kind of separated them out a little bit like that. But generally, you could even think of most of them in the team fight role, but I've put ones that are especially in every role kind of throughout the entire list. But let's just talk about initiation catch heroes. So pretty much every single one of these heroes buys either a blink dagger or has some kind of spell that allows them to have mobility. So for instance, all 3 of these heroes buy Blink Dagger. Clockwork doesn't buy Blink Dagger, but his ultimate is Hook, and it transports him, to the enemy target. So it's basically like a blink. It's some kind of initiation spell. Same thing with Hook from Pudge. Pudge hooks people into him as opposed to taking him with the hook, but it's some kind of positioning spell. Even Faceless Void has a spell that lets him jump in. Spirit Breaker has Charge to let him jump in. All of these heroes either buy Blink Dagger or they have an ability that lets them jump in, and they're usually the first to jump into the fight. So, you know, Axe calls, jumps in, picks somebody off. Clockwork initiates with Hook. Faceless Void initiates with Chronosphere. Now, this isn't always the case. Now, it's not always the case that, you know, you want to just jump in, immediately use your spell. So sometimes there might be a dispel on the enemy team. Like, let's say you're Bat Rider, you jump in, you want to use Lasso right away. Well, let's say there's like for instance, an Abaddon sitting behind that hero you want to lasso. Well, the Abaddon's just going to immediately dispel your Bat Rider ult, your Lasso. So you pretty much don't want to just initiate the fight, but you're going to at least counter-initiate. You're going to maybe wait for the fight to break out, and then you're going to blink in when the opportune moment arises, and then drag somebody out of position or do something and kill people. So even if you're not the first person to go in every single game, in every matchup, you are someone that kind of surprises somebody, catches somebody out of position, even if it's for a pick-off or something like that. Now, the same thing can be said again about like Enigma, for instance. I put Enigma in the team fight heroes, though, because I feel like a lot of these heroes, even though they have some kind of initiation, they're not 100% the main initiator. So Enigma, Sand King, let's see another one, Darkseer, none of these heroes, even Magnus, love to just be the first one in. They don't really like to be the first one in because they don't want their, you know, spells either, they don't want a lot of their spells to be countered. They also want a lot of vision of the enemy, because if you're getting, you know, your Darkseer spells off, if you're getting your Sand King ult off, which requires, you know, a long channel time, if you're getting a good RP off or a good black hole off, you want to make sure that some abilities have already been cast. You want to make sure that you have some vision of the enemy. So that's why I don't include all of them up here. These heroes, a lot of times, if you just see somebody, you can just straight up go in and just get them out of position and kill them off right away in a lot of different cases. So you don't always require vision. You just kind of want to see one person, you can immediately pick them off. And so that's why I put them here. And that's mainly what they do. A lot of these heroes, they farm up maybe a blink, they farm up 1 or 2 items, and then they're just running around the entire map, killing people off cooldown. Every time their ult's available, they're killing people. Every time, you know, someone's in a bad position, they're killing people. That's mainly what these people do, what these heroes do. They get maybe 1 or 2 items, and then they kill everyone on the map all the time. They constantly gank. They're not really hitting creeps as much. Maybe they're pushing out a lane here and there. Maybe when their ultimate's off cooldown, then they're farming. But other than that, they're trying to get pickoffs and make space. They're really space-creating heroes. So next, we're going to move on to the next set of heroes here, and this is tower pushers and defenders. And what these heroes do is these heroes usually, you know, they get up maybe 1, maybe 2 items, but it's usually like a 1-item timing or a few level timing, and they push the enemy safe lane tower. They usually take the enemy safe lane tower because they become unkillable, or they do insane tower damage. So for instance, you have Beastmaster, you have Lycan, you have Nature's Prophet. All of these heroes do insane tower damage. They take towers so quickly. Even Lone Druid, not really an offlane hero as much anymore, but still really fast tower taking. Dragon Knight, another hero. Once you hit 6, you take towers pretty quickly. Bristleback on the other hand, and Timbersaw on the other hand, they don't really take towers that quickly in and of themselves, like innately, but what they do is they become so tanky and so strong that they're so hard to kill that showing up in the lane as a hero, like being next to the tower, is not safe enough for you. You're not going to survive by just standing next to the tower. It's not enough, because they tank the tower shots so well that they can just kill you even though you're under the tower. So that's how they push the tower. They push it through like a war of attrition. And then other heroes like Underlord, even though he doesn't push the tower necessarily himself, he pushes waves really well. And he is a tower defender. Same thing with Sand King. Not the greatest tower defender, but pushes towers and defends towers really well, basically by just pushing out lanes. So these heroes have abilities that they can spam, they can clear waves, they can park themselves in front of a tower and just be like, okay, I dare you to try to push it. You're going to have to bring a lot of people to try to push this, and maybe you kill me, but in a trade for that, we're either taking another tower on the other side of the map, or my team is free farming while you bring 5 heroes or so here to try to take this tower because I'm parked in front of it. And that's mainly what these heroes do. Now, these heroes, just like these heroes, even though they're not running around the map killing people off of cooldown, even though sometimes they are, like Tidehunter, also can stick in front of towers, defend it, push towers by clearing waves, those kinds of things. He can, you know, pick people off cooldown when Ravage is up. But what they really do is they make space by just making it very hard for the enemy to gain map control. So If Timbersaw shows up in a lane at like 10 to 15 minutes, as long as he didn't get crushed in the laning stage and he has a good game, it's going to be very, very hard for you to contest this Timbersaw because he's just going to sit there. It's going to be so hard to kill him unless you have, the right items and the right spells and all that stuff, some kind of break on the team. And otherwise, he's just going to push whatever lane he wants, and you're either going to have to deal with him or watch towers fall. And so that ends up making a ton of space for your teammates because you're just like taking up a ton of dangerous space on the map. You're pushing waves and you're opening up the map for the rest of your team. Maybe your carry can just sit in the triangle and farm because you're playing so aggressively that it's very hard for, the enemy to go through you or to gain back map control in order to invade those parts of the map. So that's really how these heroes make space. They don't necessarily make space because they're initiating and killing people, although they can do that sometimes, like Sand King and Tide. They really defend towers or push towers really well to take map control away from the enemy or make them stop gaining more map control so that their teammates can farm. And then lastly, we have team fight heroes. So these heroes, they're not the best tower defenders or pushers. They're not the best initiation heroes, but they still sometimes, kill people off cooldown. They team fight off cooldown. So usually these heroes are best when you have some kind of 4 position, maybe even a 5 position or a mid player that loves to go in, loves to make space, loves to initiate the fights, loves to make chaos and wreak havoc on the map. And then these heroes will follow that up. Someone will come in, do something, give you some vision. You'll doom a hero. You'll get a pick off really quick. Those kinds of things. You'll go to push a tower. You'll use Brewmaster ult to take a really good team fight. You'll push down a tower with Abaddon. He can push towers. He's not like the best tower pusher, but really he's very good at team fighting. People just kind of march down a lane and they team fight, and he heals people. He's very hard to kill. He's super tanky. These kinds of things. Obviously, even ones like Abaddon could be a tower pusher. Doom could be an initiator. But a lot of these people a lot of these heroes, they have way more just general team fight, and they make a lot of space by participating in team fights early on. But usually, you want to pair other good team fight heroes with this hero. So, for instance, if Abaddon's the only one pushing towers, if Abaddon's the only one team fighting, if Brewmaster's the only one team fighting, if Enigma's the only one team fighting, initiating, or whatever, it just feels really bad if these are the only heroes that want to get involved early, that want to pick people off. They could maybe do it. They could essentially do it if they were forced to, if they got a really good positioning, a really good pick-off, really good map presence, stuff like that. They were really good at the hero, but they don't love it. Necro doesn't love to just, be the only one that wants to defend towers or, take fights or things like that. He doesn't love it. It's just one of these things that you need other people to work in concert with you to make sure that your spells are getting cast correctly, that you're doing effective team fight stuff. You can't just kind of go in solo, or you can't just do it. Make sure that, you have other people with you and stuff like that, because you need somebody to initiate the fight sometimes, whether you're a Darkseer or a Brewmaster, that kind of stuff. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, it's always a little fuzzy. I made this stuff up. I kind of divided it as I saw it, just kind of on the fly. Obviously, they mix and match here and all these different kinds of things, so it's not an exact science, but I just kind of wanted to demonstrate the different things that the off-lane heroes do, in that they initiate to catch heroes. That's how they can make space. They can defend towers or push towers to make space on the map, or they can be really, really good at team fighting, backing up your cores, backing up mid, backing up safe lane, just kind of pushing towers, sieging towers really effectively because it's very hard to fight into them, all that kind of stuff. So those are all the heroes that play offlane, and that's kind of how I think about them, or what their role generally is in the game. And so those are all the heroes. Now we can take a look at an actual game. We can take a look at the map and just see how to actually play offlane as a role in the game. So now we're jumping into a custom lobby here with just me, and I'm just going to show you the basics of the lane and how to play the offlane. So you pretty much want to block if you can. Obviously, you can go get the rune. It's something that usually a lot of offlaners are pretty strong level 1. Not all of them, but once you get the rune, you want to go back and you want to block, because basically the enemy creeps are going to stop here, and your creeps are going to stop here, usually in this lane, and obviously down here it's going to be right there, and that's not beneficial for you, and that's why it's the hard lane. That's why it's the off lane, because obviously you can't really chase the enemy into the tower, whereas they can chase you all the way back to here before they have to back off in the tower. So that's why it can be difficult. Now, obviously, you're going to do the same thing as a carry. You're just going to get last hits. You're going to try to get as much farm as possible by, using creep equilibrium and all that kind of stuff, creep aggro. And that's another thing too. When you click on the enemy and you drag the creeps back to your range, it's something that you definitely want to consider. So it's very, very similar to carry in that way. The big difference is you oftentimes are kind of a tanky strength lane dominating hero. So usually carries are fairly weak level 1. So it's one of these things where you really want to be aggressive as much as possible. And even though creep equilibrium is important, it's actually not as important as when you are a carry, because as a carry, you need it to stay here. You need the lane to stay here so that you can get as much farm as possible on most carries. Of the off lane, because the lane's already here, there's really not much risk. The lane is already at a bad spot for you. So spamming out your spells, tanking some creeps, it's fine as long as you get good, favorable trades and are securing your last hits. Then, if you're kind of pushing the wave in and it goes under tower, sometimes it'll rubber band all the way back to here. And then once the lane is here, that is the point where then you can kind of transition to a carry mindset where you're trying to stagnate the lane if you end up getting it here. Now at that point in your games probably, and especially higher level games, the support will try to pull. The support may try to pull this even through this way. The enemy 5 position will try to do that, and things like that to get the lane back, all of that kind of stuff, so that you can't just static the wave there. And that's more the job of your support to try to contest that and everything like that. But that's another thing you can do. If you get to the point where you can push out the wave, so let's say I'm, level 3 here. I'm just going to push out the wave as Tide Hunter. And, I'm getting my CS here. And then I say, okay, well now I can leave this wave because there's nothing I'm going to do there. Well, the next thing you can do is, obviously I didn't do it on time. I'm going to miss this, just barely. And I also missed the attacking nature. But see how you can basically pull this hard camp over to here. So obviously missed the timing. I stacked it, which is really good. That's another thing you can do, to stack it for yourself if you can farm it. So even though I stacked it, I wasn't able to pull. But it's one of those things that if I was a little bit quicker about it, if I was a little bit quicker about clearing it, at level 3 or 4, it's not really the time yet that you want to push the wave in. Usually you're going to rely on your support to do that. But once you get to level 4, 5, 6, a little bit later into the game, you have some items, you can clear the wave, those kinds of things. Then that's when you can pull, stack this, or even pull and then get the lane back in a favorable position. It's something that you often want to do, and then you can just be aggressive on the enemy carry as much as possible. So basically, you want to die as little as possible, just like the carry, but you can basically use more of your spells, be a little bit more aggressive, don't worry about the lane equilibrium as much, and just try to zone out the carry from CS as much as possible. And usually, when you're playing something like Tide, something like Centaur, Axe, whatever it is, usually you scale really well with some levels, and you start getting really aggressive, and it's hard for a lot of different heroes to contest you in lane. So that's just the nature of offlane in general. Then, once you get a bunch of levels, then you're basically going to want to push the wave in like I'm doing here, and then you want to basically pressure the tower. You can also farm this if you want, or you can pressure the tower and take the tower. Now, the reason why I picked Tide for this kind of demonstration is mainly because Tide is a hero that you can push in the tower, you can be pretty aggressive in matchups, you can cut the wave like this, so, this wave is hitting the tower. Now I can cut this wave. I can even potentially, if I dominate the lane and the enemy carry doesn't want to show up because, I'm just crushing them, I can potentially pull this camp, or pull this wave over to the small camp and get a lot of farm. You can do this with Bristleback, Axe, a lot of heroes, any hero that has an AoE like this, and then look at how much pressure I'm applying to the tower. Now, let's say the support shows up or someone else shows up and I'm really strong. I have Ravage. I can go and I can dive them, those kinds of things. That's what you want to be doing with the offlane. That's really the point of the offlane. Hopefully, as an offlane hero, when you're winning the lane, that means that eventually at 7, 8 minutes, something like that, this is what you can do without dying. You've pressured the carry enough, you've killed the carry enough, you're winning the lane enough that this is what you want to do. This is how you want to play most offlane heroes. Now, if you're a Beastmaster, if you're a Lycan, if you're a Nature's Prophet, like I said, a tower pusher, you're going to more directly push the tower because you're going to clear the wave and then just absolutely destroy the tower. Sometimes you can even take the tower pre-5 minutes if you're just absolutely dominating the lane. But this is pretty much how you play, how you lane with offlaners. And then once this tower's down, or once you feel like you need to leave this, sometimes your carry wants to come up here because he's having a bad lane. That's when you either TP bottom or you go mid, because a hero like Tide, you usually buy like something like maybe Pipe on him to get him extra tanky because he already has built-in damage block and damage reduction. Then you kind of can just come down here, sit in this lane, and just be like, okay, now it's offlaner versus offlaner. It's very, very hard for you guys to kill each other. You don't really have the damage yet, probably, just depending on the matchups, obviously. But it's just one of these things that now I can just defend this lane. I can defend mid if they're trying to push mid, all that kind of stuff. And then, when I have my ultimate up, I can use it off cooldown to get kills, and that's just kind of what you want to do. But you do also want to farm, because something like Tide is a very good example. You are eventually going to buy Blink. You want to get Blink. Your Blink timing is very, very important. So once you get a few items, maybe your phase, your hood, and then your Blink, that is the time before that you're trying to farm as much as possible, defend towers while you're doing that, and then you can start looking to get a little bit more involved, farm a little less, but just, get participating in kills a little bit more. And that's kind of just basically how you play the laning stage, how you play the early game, how to conceptualize it and think about it, and what a successful lane looks like. It's basically, casting your spells, harassing the enemy, not feeding, and then eventually getting strong enough that you can push this wave, cut it, and take the tower, depending on the hero and how it works. So that's pretty much how to think about the lane as an offlaner, regardless of how you're picking or what you're picking or the matchups. Now we're jumping into a replay here of Mind Control playing Sand King, and I picked Sand King mainly because Sand King is a very good hero in kind of a all-around aspect. Like I said about Tide similarly on the list, is that he kind of does a little bit of everything. But you see how aggressive he's being, even level 1 with his stun. Now, Sand King's one that you can get a lot of different skill builds. You can kind of skill any one of your 3 skills first level. Stun is very good, though, because it allows you to be very aggressive. But you see how aggressive he was being, and it kind of forced the enemy to have their lane pushed under tower. And so because that first wave was pushed under tower, although it potentially sets up a scenario where the enemy gets level 2 before you, it's actually really good to force the enemy, by being aggressive on them, to have your first wave go under tower like that, because then the wave comes back like this and just allows you to get way more aggressive. You see how aggressive he's being on this Medusa after, as soon as the Q, his stun is on cooldown. Thankfully for Medusa, he gets level 2 just in time to get that mana shield up. Otherwise, he obviously easily would have died. But this is exactly what you can do with most offlaners against most carry matchups. Now, there are specific matchups that are pretty hard, like Slark against Tide, like AM against Sand King, these kinds of things. There are specific matchups that can be fairly difficult from the offlane. But a lot of times, the whole point of your hero is you are able to be pretty aggressive. You're able to kind of get really aggressive with your spells early on, level 1, 2, 3, and just get a lot of damage and just harass the enemy out of lane, just force them to retreat, force them to use a lot of resources early on, these kinds of things. So you see how aggressive Mind Control is being here, and how much he's just kind of punishing any little misstep, any little time that whether Medusa or the Grimstroke feels like they can kind of step up or be out from under the tower, he's just immediately stunning them as soon as it's off cooldown. So this is just a perfect example of how aggressive you want to play as an offlaner. You don't want to sit back and just farm. You don't want to just play like you're a carry, because you're not. You usually have a strength of being really good early game in the first few levels. You don't want to allow the enemy carry to get levels, to get some farm, and just be better in the lane. It's just not what you want to do. It's not what the offlaner does. It's all about aggression. It's all about knowing your timings and punishing the enemy if they don't know their timings, if they don't know how strong you are. And so that's a perfect example of how to play the early game as an offlane hero. And then you see, obviously, the 4 position pulled. It was really good. Then they were able to get that stun there onto the Grimstroke. It just worked out perfectly. So obviously, having a good 4 position helps, but you can also do some of those things yourself if you need to. It's not just the support's job. If you want to pull that, you can also do that yourself. It's not that hard. It's something you can also do. It's just that, obviously, it's better if your support does it, but it's still things that you can do as well. So these are all things that you can do. But, I mean, laning mechanics in general, still very similar to other lanes, to being carry and stuff like this, but obviously the aggression is the big part of it. Then we will skip ahead after this to probably a later portion of the game when we can see how do you take towers, how do you defend towers, those kinds of things. So I skipped ahead only a few minutes here because I actually just want to show you this little sequence. So it's about 6 minutes in the game. He's level 5, but he's been doing well enough in this lane. He's strong enough now that he pretty much can solo the lane 1v2 because he has some spells up. He is almost level 6. He has some items. He's just in a good spot. So Medusa is a hero that's going to be kind of difficult to really shove the wave into. She can push the wave out. It's one of those heroes that's not always going to be the easiest to contest her, especially with someone like Sand King if you're alone. You see, he's still harassing, but he's just not going to have a lot of kill threat. But basically what this does, if you're very strong and you're able to solo lane, is it allows your 4 position to basically do their own thing. They can go gank, they can go ward, they can go top, they can go mid, whatever it is, or they can go mid, protect the tower, and then they can allow your mid to rotate to, you know, the other lane, things like that. So It's just one of those things that being strong and having a good early game and getting your farm up and knowing how to play aggressive, even if you don't take the tower, it allows kind of your heroes to, or your forward position to open up the map a little bit more, have a more presence on the map, or, you know, maybe the other, maybe the Sky could have stayed here and gotten more kills, those kinds of things. But I just wanted to show you that because obviously he's been laning here solo, kind of 1v2 for the last like 3 minutes, which just allows more space on the map to be put. Now, because he knows it's going to be hard as a Sankey, he's not the best tower pusher. He kind of just pushes in the wave, but he doesn't do a lot of damage to tower. It's going to be hard to really kick the Medusa out of lane by himself. He's basically watching mid, because he is a very, very good tower defender. So you see, as soon as he clears the wave and the enemy's really getting aggressive on the tower, there's 3 here, and he says, no, you are not taking this tower, because they obviously have a DK, they have some strong heroes that want to push this mid tower. It's the most important tower in the game. So he TPs there, and he says, no, DK, you're not taking this tower, I'm defending it, that kind of stuff. It's something you definitely want to look to do on Sand King, on Tide, on other heroes that are really good at defending towers. Any of those tower defenders like I talked about. You want to look to defend the towers as much as possible, especially mid. If you can't take this tower bottom here, then you want to defend mid. It's kind of either or. You want to either defend the towers, make sure that you're defending. You can even defend top sometimes if your carry wants to rotate, or you want to look to take this tower. That's basically the entire point of a hero like Sand King or other offlane heroes that aren't just strictly ganking heroes. So now that he tried to defend mid, obviously it's a DK. The DK is going to get the tower eventually. He comes back bottom. He knows that eventually Medusa's going to leave the lane, try to go to the jungle, get to hit the Ancients a bunch, and then as soon as, you know, that tower's defended, the Medusa leaves the lane, he goes right back bottom and kills this tower. This is extremely important. This is basically kind of like I demonstrated in the game that I showed you, and obviously the little custom lobby is, you want to be pushing that tower. Ideally, you get that tower around 10 minutes, hopefully before, maybe a little bit after, but that's the ideal. That's the perfect game for an offlaner, is to get that tower solo without anybody else's help. Maybe the mid helps you, maybe your forward position helps you, but to get that tower early is just so important. It opens up the map so much, and that's honestly your main goal. Obviously, dominating the lane, getting kills, all those kinds of things, but really it's getting that tier 1 tower for your team is so important. So even if you're having a great game, don't back up. Don't back off. Don't go to the jungle. Don't just look for your own farm. You need to open up the map for your team, and one of the biggest parts of doing that is killing that safe lane tower. So that's super important. And then you see, as soon as that was done, he rotated to help his team. Now he's pushing out waves, defending towers, and that's pretty much what you want to do on a hero like Sand King until you get your initiation tool like Blink. Now some heroes, they don't defend towers well till they get Blink, so they want to just farm till they get Blink after they, you know, maybe push a tower or things like that. But Sand King, a great tower defender, so that's what he's going to do. He's going to push waves, defend towers, then once he gets his blink, then he's going to look to get involved. Now, I only jumped ahead like a minute or two, because I wanted to just kind of show you why it was so important to take that bottom tower, and what you want to do in an offlane here. So you see, they're basically coming all here to defend top, and he's very strong right now. He has max stun, max sandstorm, he has his ultimate available, and basically look at what's happening. Even though, obviously they killed the Marcy, that's really good. They have a Timbersaw who's really crushing. They get 2 kills, which is great, but really the biggest thing on the map that's happening right now is this lifesteal is getting absolute free farm. He has this entire portion of the map to farm himself. He can push this out, all that kind of stuff, and that's largely because of what Sand King did, taking that tower early on. And now he can participate in ganks. He doesn't really have to worry. His lifestealer can have a free game now, get a few items up, and these kinds of things. And that's the main thing that you want to be doing as an offlaner, is you want to get farm, you want to get items, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is you're not taking up the space that your carry needs. So once he took the tower, once it got to like 11 or 12 minutes, he pushed mid-wave if it needed to be pushed, and he went top and things like that, but he's not taking up space that his carry wants to farm. He's just not doing that. What he's doing instead is he's looking to gank. So he runs into the enemy jungle because the Medusa's there, because they know the Medusa's there based on the wards that they have in the triangle. He's just looking to get involved. And the thing is, him and the Sky die there. This isn't the best fight ever. And it ends up that Lifestealer does come, looks to get involved. These kinds of things are good. Sometimes your carry will look to get involved. Obviously, the Timbersaw is like unkillable right now, so that is a really good part of this lineup that they have. But that's another thing too. As an offlaner, you don't want to be all upset, super upset about dying. It's okay to die as an offlaner. It's okay to go in there, sacrifice yourself for the team, you know, get in, get a stun off, initiate a team fight, and look at the trade they got. They killed the Medusa, they killed the Legion, they got like a 3-for-2 trade, which is really good because they killed the enemy carry. That's a great trade. That's a fantastic trade. You'll take dying there as Sand King any day, especially because you traded carry for not a carry for just an offlane and a support. It was just a great trade. So that's what you want to look to do as an offlane. Obviously, don't feed. Don't put yourself in stupid positions. Obviously, play with your team, but don't be scared of dying. You need to be aggressive. You need to put yourself in a position to make plays for your team so that your carry and maybe your mid can be the ones that are more effective on the map to do more damage, to get more farm, all of those kinds of things. And now we see, obviously, them setting up. Now, as soon as he gets his Blink Dagger, where he's setting up for a kill with the Infest Bomb from the Lifestealer. Very, very good at this. This is great play. You see, he respawns after that team fight, immediately looks to get involved with his Blink Dagger. Obviously, didn't need to use the Blink there. He just kind of found it with the Infest Bomb. This is just perfect play from Mind Control, exactly how you want to play offlaners, especially ones that can initiate. Now, the last thing I want to show you is 30-some minutes into the game, and a few fights didn't go so well, so the enemy team is hitting their high ground. This is just a good example of tower defense, but also using your spells, using your positioning effectively as an offlaner to just cause havoc and chaos in the fights to distract the enemy. So he goes in, he stuns the DK, he tanks a bunch of spells, ends up living, thankfully, because his Lifestealer and his Timbersaw went on the back line, and now he's just back into the fight. He's just going to be using his stun and stuff off cooldown to try to just create a lot of havoc in the team fight, just be super, super annoying in this team fight. So you see they try to go there on the DK, doesn't work out exactly. Now he uses a stun again to stop the Medusa TP, all this different kind of stuff. It's just a great example. He turns his back to the Medusa to not get stunned, uses his ult, and then takes the fight from there. So it's just a great example of the base defense as a Sand King, as any kind of offlaner. You want to be in front. You want to be using your spells constantly. You want to control people, stun people, do everything you can to defend the base, to defend towers, to do all of that kind of stuff throughout the game. Obviously, this is 30 minutes in the game, but up until then, if you're an offlaner, you got to get involved in team fights. You got to get involved in pickoffs, all that kind of stuff that we showed partially earlier. And this is just what you're doing for the majority of the fight, the rest of the fight. When there's lanes to push, as if you're a lane pusher like Sand King, push the lanes. We just saw him cut a bunch of lanes top because he knew they were dead. So that's definitely something you can do. You almost never want to be hitting jungle creeps on a hero like Sand King or an offlaner in general unless there's literally nothing else to do. But because a few of them were dead, he went and cut lanes. Then as soon as the fighting starts again, he's going to be one of the first people in, taking a ton of spells, getting off all of his stuns, all of that kind of stuff. That's mainly how you want to be playing an offlane. It's really just the quintessential part of offlaner. You see this, he's playing front on the map. He's playing up on the map. As soon as he sees somebody to stun, he's initiating on them. Then they're getting a Skywrath ulti. They force him to pop BKB, all this kind of stuff. This is the quintessential offlane player. It's the quintessential offlane hero. Exactly how you want to play offlane. It's just that you don't want to be sitting passively. You don't want to be feeding, obviously. You don't want to be so aggressive that you're feeding. You want to play with your team. You obviously see that he knows that his team is around him when he's playing this way, but it's just that he's not sitting there doing absolutely nothing. You see he's waiting in the backline for a good chance to fight, but then the Jakiro obviously dies instantly, so they back up. But it's just one of these things that, like, you don't want to just feed, but you want to be frontlining. You want to be front in the map. You want to push dangerous parts of the map. All these kinds of things. And then obviously be super involved. Go in. Don't be scared to die when you're defending high ground, when you're taking team fights, all that kind of stuff. They end up winning this game, and he probably has a score of like 4 and 6 or 7 or something. We can actually look at it here if I just go pause the game and end up looking at it. I think this is him. Yeah. He's ends up being 4 and 8 with 22 assists. Like, that's not a bad score for an offlane, especially at high levels like this. Obviously, in your games, if you stomp, you can have a lot of kills and less deaths, but don't be scared to go in there. Don't be scared to frontline, all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what you want to do on offlane as an offlane hero. So that's pretty much how to play offlane. That's how to play the laning stage, transition to the mid game, and then later in the game using your spells, constantly initiating fights, constantly getting into team fights, getting involved, all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what you want to do to play offlaner. Don't be scared. It's not for anybody that just wants to sit around farming creeps all day. It's for people that want to get in, get active, start fighting, all that kind of stuff. And we're seeing another fight break out here. So that's pretty much how to play offlane. Those are the offlane basics, just kind of the fundamentals of the role in general. If you guys like this video, I hope it helps any of your future offlaners, any of you future offlaners, or people looking to get into the role. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. The links are below for my Discord, for my Patreon, where you can support me or just get coaching. Also, my Twitch, where I do replay reviews. If you want a replay review, just let me know in the comments, or come to the Discord and request one, or just watch a Twitch stream and request a replay review there. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.